Hi, everybody. Good evening. It is Tuesday, March 17th, 2020. Welcome to Evoke Therapy Program's broadcast. The beginning of tonight's broadcast was appropriate for the week that we're all having, I'm sure, because we had some difficult technical difficulties. So I'm starting a little bit late. Thank you for your patience. I can also tell by the numbers of people in attendance this evening that people are craving for some kind of connection to each other and to the outside world. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about tonight. The topic for tonight that we chose was social distancing and self care. And hopefully, not too long from now, somebody will come across this broadcast and not even think about it or have it ring so clearly for them about what we mean by social distancing, because that's a phrase that's really new for most of us in our lexicon. It's not something we've talked about. But as of tonight, this evening, March 17th, 2020, we're in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, and we're being asked by our governments and by our communities to stay indoors and to keep from a lot of contact with other people, only as necessary. So I want to talk about self-care tonight. And the first thing that I want to say is, especially in this time, I think it's important that we understand that self-care can look different for a lot of people. I think we all have ways that we want to define self-care and we want to identify it for other people. And one important feature of self-care is that it's for you. It matches what you need and nobody else gets to define it. So I'm going to talk about some examples, some ideas, some principles involved in self-care and how it relates to social distancing. I think what's coming up for a lot of us, and if you're watching the news at all or talking to people, you know this to be true, is that there's a tremendous amount of anxiety and fear. This is unknown. We've had other pandemics before. We've had even world wars before, but never have we had the kind of information, which includes, in this case, a lot of misinformation. Never have we had the kind of information spread that we have today combined with this kind of a situation. We get so much comfort with our pain in connection to other people, right? As a therapist, sometimes the only thing that I can offer to my clients as they're experiencing genuine grief and pain and hurt and sadness is that connection. And this particular situation that we're in asks us to separate. So I think our attempt to bring some of the tools online, we do this every week anyway for our clients, but we're going to be doing this every day this week, is to try to create some kind of connection with each other and for each other. I'll announce that at the end, but over the next few days, even during the day, we're going to be having some broadcasts, and some of that's going to be where people could just share, anonymously, of course, but share what's going on for them, ask questions. The difficulty with the kind of fear that we're experiencing is fear is a physical response to a threat, right? It's our brain telling us that we need to move or take action in some way, right? The brain triggers our adrenaline. It triggers epinephrine to be released into the system, which this is the same as adrenaline. And that adrenaline gives us energy, sends blood to the muscles so that we can move and respond to the perceived threat. But in the situation where we're exposed to chronic, moderate levels of stress with not a lot of physical outlets, that increase in chemicals in our body and the cortisol response, the stress response in our bodies, can start to affect our cardiac system, our vascular system. Our blood pressure can go up. And also, unfortunately, especially in light of this pandemic, stress can start to limit the immune system's ability to react to potential threats, to potential disease, bacteria, or viruses. So it's critical that we figure out ways to moderate the stress that we're experiencing. And especially because we have limited outlets, because so much of us, there's a lot of us that are either having to change our work dramatically or maybe even not work. And as some of you know, sometimes in moments of stress or tragedy, work is a safe outlet. I know for me, I had to do some work today, a project that I was working on. And for me, for about 4.5 hours, I was free of the stress of the coronavirus because I was working on a project that I was working on by myself where I was so focused. And I don't think all of us have that. So let's talk about some things that we can do to respond to this buildup and even to reverse the buildup of the chemicals in our body that are the result of stress and fear and anxiety. First of all, the news and the news media can be difficult. We need to keep informed. That's important. But there are so many voices, too many voices perhaps. And with that is coming a lot of conflicting information and misinformation. And everybody has a solution. Somebody that works on my PR asked me yesterday for a blog that talked about how to deal with social distancing and the stress that we're all experiencing. And as I found myself writing this blog, I found myself very uninspired because literally there were dozens of blogs just like it already up by mid-morning. Everybody having an answer, a solution to the fix for the dilemma that we're all in. And so I abandoned the blog actually and told my PR people, I said, I don't feel really inspired. I think there's the news media, social media is already flooded with this kind of information. And she came back to me and she said, well, I don't want you to write a standard blog or article, op-ed on this piece. I want you to talk about the spiritual and emotional aspects of what we're all experiencing. So then when I felt that there was a need, then I went back to it and felt like I had something unique to contribute. So we have to feel like we have meaning. Even during this webinar tonight, frankly, I didn't know how many people were going to show up. And at first I thought, maybe this isn't necessary. I don't want to insert myself into the public without the need. Somebody shared with me today that they thought that their best contribution would be to stand by with something they called passive positivity, which means keeping a positive attitude but not contributing to the noise that's out there. I shared this story. For years now, working as a wilderness therapist with group sizes on average of 8 to 9, there would every once in a while come into the group a child, a young adult, a young adolescent male in my case, who was by far the lowest functioning member of the group. He was always pushing everybody's buttons. He was always a drag on the group's energy. We couldn't get things accomplished. He was really frustrating and upsetting to everybody. And the rest of the group was split in their response. Half of the group wanted to bully and punish him for his effect on the group. The other half of the group was trying to be helpful and offer suggestions and fixes and ideas to help him. And as I watched this happen again and again over the years, I noticed that there were some students that just sat by quietly, who recognized that there were plenty of people there to help, including the staff and myself, and that their best contribution was not to add to the noise. So part of what happens in situations where there's a lot of anxiety, some of the noise out there is really our anxiety. And I'm going to talk about this as it relates to our children, because sometimes we give to them something that we are needing that they don't need. So sometimes we can just be quiet. Sometimes we can just sit by positive with a positive state of mind without contributing to the noise and find out where we can be happy, but not inserting ourselves into situations where it's really just our anxiety that's speaking. It's important to find reliable, ideally non-political sources of our information. The World Health Organization, the CDC, NPR, those are some good sources where we can get some reliable information if that's our goal. But there's something about fear that's interesting. It is intoxicating. Fear is like a drug. Sometimes we criticize our political leaders or even the media. Right? We criticize them for who they are and what they're doing to our society. But really, our media and our political leaders are just a symptom of what's going on in society. There's an old adage in media that says if it bleeds, it leads, right? That panic and fear, drama is what sells. So what comes on our TV screen is really just a symptom of our society. So part of what we can do to contribute to the antidote to this intense, panicky feeling of fear is not attend to it, right? Shift our focus, shift our gaze. So keep up, be informed, but be intentional about the sources of information, where you get your information. I came up with this idea about something I'm calling social media distancing. Maybe social media distancing is one of the more important practices for our mental health during this pandemic. Maybe taking time away from social media is just what the doctor ordered. Now, again, one of the challenges that we're uniquely in is that we have more time on our hands at home, more time to gaze on our devices, which at times, for many of us, can be an escape. But when our devices are flooded with public anxiety, fear, and panic, it ceases to become an escape. So putting away the phones, replacing them with other activities, which I'll talk about, can be a helpful process. But again, it's with the intention of quieting this wave of fear and anxiety that's sweeping over all of us. The most difficult part of this is to find sources of support, sources of self-care, when we all have limited resources. We can't go out to the movie. We can't go see a Broadway show. We can't watch our sporting events. Our live TV is limited in many cases. We can't go out to eat. And so all of a sudden, so many of the things that so many of us rely on for healthy distractions are unavailable to us. So let's talk about, and some of these fall under that list of suggestions that are out there. But I want to talk about again at the end about the spiritual component. There is a lot that we have access to online to help with meditation. Now, what happens in a situation like this, in a fear or a stress response, is that our nervous system is upregulated, right? It's ready for fight or flight. And while that can be life-saving when the threat is imminent, there's not a lot to do right now but to sit quietly or sit at home or stay away from large groups. So that stress response that we're experiencing, and if we don't mitigate it, like I said earlier, it can be harmful. So if we're going to do this, we're going to have to try to find a way to lower the nervous system's response. We're going to have to try to find a way to hack our bodies to limit our exposure to stressful situations and information that's not necessary, and to learn to lower the nervous system's alertness. Something simple as breathing through the nose can help. Taking an online meditation class, right? There are plenty out there. There are apps on your phone. Breathing exercises, they trick the mind into thinking that you're in a state of calm instead of a state of panic. So taking online yoga or other mindfulness classes or lessons can be an important part, but it has to be intentional. You know the hardest part of it, and I think this is true for a lot of us, we are so capable of responding to crises, of fixing them. And part of the resource that all of us use to fix a crisis is information, right? We set our mind to it, almost obsessively, gathering information. And with that mind that we have that allows us to solve problems and the tremendous amount of information, we think we're going to solve it. That's what was happening for me for the first couple of days. I was watching and reading everything that I could, thinking there's got to be something in here that's going to give me hope, some bit of information where I or we are going to find the cure to this problem. And what I realized after a couple of days is this is not going to work for me. My blood pressure, my stress, my cortisol level, my sleep, all of those things are going to actually threaten my safety more than present themselves to me in the form of a solution. So we have to shift. We have to shift from the more normal mindset that there's something that we can fix with this. We can set ourselves to small projects, which I'll talk about, like what I was doing today was voice recording my new book. We can set ourselves to small projects like that, where we can accomplish something. But when you focus on something that you cannot control ultimately, that you have a very limited amount of control over, you're going to experience overwhelming waves of stress and anxiety. Downloading a meditation app and begin a practice of meditation. over the next couple of days, I'm going to start off each of the broadcasts with some simple breathing for 5 or 6 minutes. Like I said, anxiety is your nervous system on high alert, and some simple tools may help you to reduce the damaging and exhausting impact of chronic stress. Read a book, right? Find a project, something that you've been procrastinating. There's this thing that I've been working on for the past few years, and I keep putting it on the back burner, but I'm going to pick it up this week, and that is I decided this morning I'm going to finish my novel. Writing a novel is a much more, for me, exhaustive process than the self-help books that I've written or the blogs that I've written in the last couple of days, which I've written a couple of, right? It takes a lot of patience. But there's time this week, found time that I have where I can work on that. And what I found, like with my recording of my audiobook today, is for a few hours, I'm not obsessing about what's going on in the world, health-wise. Write letters to yourself or to others. Sit down and write letters. Journaling, if you're only writing to yourself, is like having a discussion with yourself, and it can be helpful to record your feelings. Part of, like I said, part of the limitation of resources that we all have right now is that social connection. You're not going to go out and spend time with friends or groups of friends that you might have done in the past. So journaling can be a way to begin to have a conversation with yourself, to record it. You can use exercise. The reason that they so strongly encourage exercise and a walk outside, I have an open window just to my right where I'm watching family after family walk by in the open air, walk around our block. Exercise is critical because it burns up the fuel that your brain is telling your glands, your adrenal glands, to produce to respond to the threat. So I would say it's imperative to move your body, to exercise. You can do it using, again, online or streaming services. It could be jogging. It could be anything that burns those calories, that burns up that energy. Exercising outdoors, away from other people, can be helpful and soothing to the nervous system. One of the experiments that they actually cite when talking about wilderness therapy is during the turn of the 20th century, from 1918 to 1920, when there was the Spanish flu outbreak, which was tremendously deadly, is that they took a lot of the patients and put them outside. And they noticed immediately when the patients were outside that their moods were elevated, their hope was elevated, and many of them saw a dramatic improvement in their physical well-being. So if you can find places that are safe, outside, in your yard, on your balcony even, just being out in nature can make a difference. And of course, we have decades of research since then to talk about what outdoors does for mindfulness, what outdoors does to help regulate the nervous system, what outdoor exposure does in wilderness therapy. Family games, putting away devices. In our family, we've been encouraging each other to put away the devices as much as possible because, again, it's intoxicating. We're drawn to it. We are information addicts. And we believe somewhere that the more information we get, the more able we are to respond to any perceived threat. But in this case, it can become very, very harmful. It can become part of the problem. The medicine is worse than the cure when speaking of information. Watch an entertaining series on as a family or individual. This is the perfect time to binge watch something. If you've ever felt like it was gluttonous to binge watch, well, guess what? Now you have the time. Now you're actually doing your civic duty to binge watch. You can watch something educational if you want. Again, if you were putting off a series on the History Channel, some information, this could be a time to do something like that. It's a great time to put off, to take up something that you have put off. But again, most of all, I want to speak to the spiritual aspect, the spiritual lens. Um, there are really two sources of energy, right? It's what George Lucas was writing about when he wrote the Star Wars saga. And these two energies, um, they're kind of they're in conflict with each other. They're when one is present, the other goes away, and vice versa. And those two sources of energy are fear and love. And just to illustrate the point, this is something I would do with my wilderness kids years ago. For those of you who are Star Wars geeks, you'll know what I'm talking about. For those of you who aren't, I'll give you the context. In the third episode of the Star Wars saga, Anakin Skywalker, who was soon to become Darth Vader, after a life of tragedy, lost his wife, the love of his life. And in that ultimate loss, that ultimate pain, he was transformed into Darth Vader. And the solution that had been building up for some time with him was, I'm never going to hurt like this again. You know, Darth Vader didn't think he was the problem. He thought he was the solution. He thought he could channel that pain and that fear, turn it into control and anger. And eventually it became unwieldy and became hate for society. But that is one way of approaching life, right? Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate. That's what Yoda said. That's one way of doing it. And by the way, in case it might seem laughable that I'm using George Lucas and Star Wars, this is based on Joseph Campbell's work. That's where George Lucas got the idea. And Joseph Campbell, the famous American mythologist, got his information from all the myths that he could find throughout all recorded history. So this one source of energy is this fear. It's intoxicating. We're pulled into it, and it takes over us. And exclusively on the other side is love. That's the word I was searching for a few minutes ago that I couldn't find. On the other side of the equation is love. And I used to ask my adolescent boys, I would say, so when Darth Vader felt the ultimate pain, he became angry and controlling. And when Yoda felt pain, what did he do? I would ask them. And they would guess or maybe not know. And I would say, when Yoda had a loss or a pain, he felt it. In the same episode that I was referring to, Yoda found out through his senses that a great many children had been slaughtered, had been lost, had been killed. And when he discovered that information, when that information came to him, he took a big sigh, his eyes moistened, and he began to cry. He began to feel it. Love gives us the capacity to feel and the courage and capacity to move through our feelings. Another aspect of the spiritual side of love is that even when we look at our anxiety, the fear that we're all feeling, the lack of confidence, what we're feeling is really connected to our love. If we look at our fear closely, we can find in it all that we love. Our lives, our children, each other. One of the ways that looking deeply and sitting in our pain can give us comfort is we realize that it's connected. It's intertwined with everything that we love. And then that can lead us to a sense of gratitude for being alive, right? I know, probably like you, I'm having to deal with a lot of plans upcoming. My immediate trips, of course, have been canceled, some a couple of months out. I'm wondering if it's going to really play out. As I talk to friends and associates and I'm asked about plans, I have to respond. I'm sure like all of you do with, I don't know, we'll see. We're kind of taking it 30 days at a time in our work. And so nothing to us is promised. But what we have tonight is ourselves and each other, right? Somebody taught me this once. when I talked about how painful it was to think about one of our good friends, one of our mutual good friends, who was losing a young child to a disease. And he was journaling on social media about this slow, steady loss of life. And I said to the mutual friend, I said, I can only look at it a little bit at a time. And my wise friend said to me, but it's beautiful, because the pain that you feel is because of the love that you feel, and it means that you're still alive. So one thing that we all share tonight is that we're alive. Right? The pain, the sadness, the fear even, it means that we're alive if we can feel those things. It means that we care and that we love. I appreciate this format tonight to be able to connect to you, to talk to you, because as I've been writing and being asked to write things, and I was asked by my team to do this once a day over the next 4 days at least, didn't know if people wanted it or needed it. It gave me purpose. It gave me connection to you. Even when I was reading my book, I read it for about 4 hours today, give or take. And when I was reading my book to a computer with a producer, I was thinking I have something that I'm giving. So finding meaning, find a project, finding something you can do can be helpful. And sometimes, like I said, that can just be entertainment. So what are the take-homes for me? Information which sometimes gives us a sense of control right now can be leading to anxiety. So we may have to treat information differently than we do in our typical everyday lives. And that will have to be a conscious decision. We will have to resist the urge, the feel, the gravitational pull that more information is going to save us. We need to be updated. We need to keep ourselves informed, but we need to realize where we cross that threshold in an area where it's just causing us more pain and anxiety. This is an opportunity for all of us. For those of you who have participated in 12-step programming before, or maybe you have a child or a loved one who's an addict, you know that feeling you're feeling right now of really unwellness? That's the feeling that comes from focusing on something you cannot control. That's really what a lot of addicts are medicating. That's why the serenity prayer is in place in recovery from addiction. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Isn't that a perfect prayer or meditation? A perfect prayer or meditation for our lives today. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. If we could repeat that over and over again, just like people who are in recovery for addiction or codependency, we might find the same peace that they find from that practice. And again, it gives you some empathy for your child. If you have a child with us, or you have a child that's struggling, this is what they feel like. And things like drugs do a fantastic job in the short term to erase those feelings. If we can learn the spiritual journey that we're all on, and learn to connect to the love that is beneath the fear, beneath the things that we care about, that we feel threatened, we can have some comfort in that. Learn to define self-care for yourself. I almost didn't include the list, like I said. There are so many lists out there. And this is not going to just come to you. You're going to have to make some conscious choices about what self-care is for you to mitigate the stress that's presenting itself to all of us. Find ways to connect. If you want to join us each day, you're welcome to. Find ways to connect online. Find ways to connect to people that you love, that you care about. One of the things I'm doing right now is I'm doing some FaceTime calls with some clients this week so that there's more of a connection for them. Find a project, right? Find something that you have control over, something worthwhile, whatever it is. It could be something like a craft, or it could be something like I was describing the book that I've put on the shelf for years. The work that I was able to do with reading my audiobook today. Find a project. The 2 blogs that I wrote yesterday. Find projects. And you'll get some relief, which we need it. We need healthy release. Find a book. I have a couple of suggestions if you want them, but find a book to read. Take the opportunity with the found time that you have to do something you've been putting off. A meditation practice, even if just a few minutes a day, or particularly when you're feeling upregulated, I think is almost imperative. I probably had to practice breathing today 20 times when I found myself getting nervous and anxious. And understanding the effects of chronic stress on the nervous system suggests to us how important it is for us to do this. I want to announce a couple of exciting things. If you have questions, comments, things you want to share, please send them in. But I have a couple of exciting things. All of our parent support groups coming up are postponed for right now. But we were actually going to do this. I know you might not believe this, but we were going to do this before the pandemic. We're going to begin virtual parent support groups via Zoom. So what that looks like is we're sending out invitations to all of our alumni and families. And we're going to create Zoom conferences. So we'll have up to 12 people per meeting that I will be hosting. These are not going to be anonymous. Your picture and voice will be on the screen. If we need to create more and more of these groups to feel the need, then we'll do it. So you'll respond to the RSVP. If you want to sign up and you didn't get one, email keisha@evoketherapy.com. And we're going to host virtual parent support groups. We thought about this for parents who can't get to the places, the sites that we normally have our parent support groups. But then we thought there are a lot of people that might live in New York City or San Francisco or Los Angeles who can't get there anyway. So we're going to start this is going to be a regular practice at Evoke, independent of the pandemic. We're going to do that for our intensive alumni. So you'll get an invitation if you're an alumni to one of our intensives. And the first one will be April 1st for intensives. April 1st, Wednesday, April 1st at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And for our wilderness parents and alumni, it'll be April 2nd. That's Thursday, April 2nd, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. So those invitations went out today. If you didn't get one and you fit one of those categories, please email us at keisha@evoketherapy.com. KAYSHA@evoketherapy.com. Right now, we still have our next parent workshop for any current parent coming up. Will be May 2nd and 3rd in our Oregon program. We're canceling things about 30 days out right now. So until we get within 30 days, we're keeping them on the calendar. Our next Finding You intensive, which as for right now is still on the calendar, we may need to cancel it. All of you know this. All of you know this is all a work in progress. But we have a couple of spots left in our April 22nd intensive. And then the next one after that is May 27th. We have postponed our England Finding You intensive until the fall. And then our Finding You 2 programs, we just opened up our second one. So we have a July 8th through 12th Finding You 2 that is just opened up. So if you're interested, sign up for our Finding You 2. Email us at intensives@evoketherapy.com or go to our website for more information. We encourage all of our current parents to go to 12 12-step support groups, Al-Anon, CODA, or Families Anonymous. You can also go to refugerecovery.org, or the National Alliance on Mental Illness has classes, information, resources in your local areas. Of course, practice safe social distancing for the time being. I saw one online meeting today where people were in a large auditorium sitting apart from each other. But make sure you talk to a medical health professional before you make any decisions which might put you at risk. All of these broadcasts are available on our podcast app, any of your favorite podcast apps by searching Evoke Therapy Programs or Finding You at Evoke Therapy Podcast. On Twitter and Instagram, you can find Evoke Therapy using the handle @Evoke Therapy. You can also find @Evoke Therapy Intensives on Instagram. Evoke Therapy Programs is on Facebook, and the Evoke Family Foundation is also on Facebook. I have 2 books out right now. And by the way, I lowered both of my books to the very lowest that Amazon would let me lower them. During this pandemic, my books are the very, very lowest. So the digital copy of the new book is only $2.99. That's the lowest that they would allow me to go. And the print version is $10.02. The Journey of the Rogue Parent print version is $12.95. That's because there's some extra shipping with that, and I wasn't able to lower the Kindle version, the ebook version of the Journey of the Rogue Parent. But for right now, they're lowered to the lowest possible price that I was allowed to lower them. Tomorrow night, I'm going to talk about how to talk to your kids when the world feels so unsafe. I wanted to tell you this overall. The kids in the field are doing well. The kids in the field are insulated both physically but also emotionally from everything that's going on. I remember back in 9/11, the same thing happened. We were all feeling it so much, and out in the field, they were well protected from it. So I'll answer some of the questions about that in just a second. Then on Thursday, so tomorrow night at 7 p.m., I'm going to do how to talk to your kids about safety. On Thursday, March 19th at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, that's just going to be an open forum where I'll take live questions. I'll talk to you guys through the chat. And then on Friday, March 20th of this week, at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, the same thing. I'm just going to open up to a live chat. All right, looks like I have lots of questions that have come in. How are you keeping the kids safe in wilderness? First of all, we have a complete list of things that we're doing that you can ask the office for, that they can provide that for you. But we're checking people before they go to the field with any kind of symptoms. We're limiting field visits. There are no unnecessary field visits, unfortunately, for right now, including family visits to the field. Okay? We're limiting our staff. We're asking all of our staff to in between shifts, to not take any trips, to stay local and practice social distancing. We're limiting all non-essential office staff. Nobody's allowed in the building unless they absolutely have to be in the building. So your children are in a pretty stable environment. They're outdoors. We're practicing the same kind of hygiene that we always practice with great diligence, and we're limiting the kind of contact. And the fact that they're outdoors in wide open spaces means that they're exposed to less surfaces and less contact with other people. Someone says, my child is at Evoke. He has been there for 5 weeks and doesn't know anything about the pandemic. All family is fine. It's really amazing out there. It's like another world. The way that you spell Kaysha, if you want to email Kaysha for anything, Kaysha at evoketherapy.com. Kaysha at evoketherapy.com. Someone says, my college-age son will be coming back home at the end of this week to live with us for the foreseeable future. And now that his college is canceled, he's a big trigger for all of the rest of us who live in our apartment. Do you have any suggestions on how to set boundaries and get some space in this environment? Separately, I've been finding it helpful to lean into one day at a time. And this too shall pass when feeling particularly anxious. You know, my wife actually asked me to say that I should include in this evening. What do you do when you have to spend time around people and you start to get on each other's nerves? And I asked her, are you trying to give me feedback? I think the only thing that I know that we've done at our house is that we've really allowed for people to take their separate space, right? We've allowed, in some cases, for things that we wouldn't allow in other cases, like for children to spend time in their room alone, to spend time binge watching their own shows, to spend time with headphones on. And my wife and I have done the same. We have spent some time, like I said earlier, doing puzzles and playing games and watching shows together. So I don't have some magic here. I don't know. It's this whole experience that, by the way, the entire world is sharing in some way. This whole experience is so unprecedented. What I know is that we have to be willing to experiment and break some of the rules because we don't have a set of rules for these kinds of things. So I don't have anything unique to that. Maybe spending some extra time for you, reading some self-help books might help you manage your triggers. That could be helpful. Wish I could be more helpful. Wish I had all the answers. Another parent asks, what do you suggest saying to a kid who's at Evoke in the next letter about the pandemic? He knows almost nothing about it. I would ask your therapist, as always, default to your child's therapist, but I don't think they need to know too much, right? Until it's time to leave. The problem with, and I'll talk about this tomorrow night, the problem with these kinds of situations is that we're just as likely to spill our anxiety onto them as we are to be a container for them. So I would take my lead from the therapist because they know how they're processing it in the group. We have very limited intakes right now and no outside visitors except for our field staff. So we're really able to kind of limit the information, but I think less is more, and I think they don't need to know. If there's a family emergency or a health concern, of course, we will handle that immediately and help you and support you in getting contact with your child. We're trying to give more satellite and phone calls between family, when it's clinically appropriate. We're trying to open that up even more. So make sure you check with your therapist before you start talking, because most importantly, we don't need to ask them to be our containers. And I don't know about you, but when I talk tomorrow night, I'll talk more about this. But I have to be very careful about what I say and what my wife and I talk about and the news that we're exposed to. Because aside from the basic to-dos and to not to-dos, my children don't need to know a lot of information. They know something's going on. School's canceled, but they don't need to hold and contain our anxiety. So check with the therapist. I think less is more. And those are my thoughts. So will you repeat what I'm providing the next couple of days? Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, I'm going to do another one of these broadcasts. Hopefully the software here is fixed or the website is fixed so you can see my slides. But I'm going to talk about how to talk to your children about stress and in general, and talk about who's taking care of whom and so forth. So that's tomorrow night. On Thursday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, it's wide open. It'll just be doing this, question and answer. And on Friday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, same thing. Wide open, question, answer, suggestions, ideas. I'm just going to be hosting something anonymously. Going forward in April, that's when we're going to have the online support groups where you will not be anonymous with each other, where everybody will be on screen, 12 people at a time. We're starting that April 1st and 2nd, and we're going to be adding as many groups as necessary and providing that as much as we can for our current and alumni families, both for our intensives and for our wilderness therapy program. I live alone and spend a lot of time working alone normally. Now the aloneness feels different and surreal. I desperately want my daughter to come visit and spend some time with me, but she insists that's not a good idea. She is right. This is a new kind of alone that I cannot describe. Can you comment or give some language to that feeling? I'm glad that you're talking about it. I think we're all feeling it. My son is in California and isn't working and isn't going to school, but is keeping himself quarantined. And if he was in school, I wouldn't feel any different. But my wife was saying tonight, she just wishes he was home, right? I think it's comfort to us, right? I think we're asking for comfort, which is normal, is human. And I think the people that give us the greatest comfort are the people that we love the most. And so even though we might not be seeing them otherwise, or we might be seeing them and we do spend a lot of time alone, I think we're looking for comfort. And I see your name, I know who you are, and it's good to see you. It's good to see you. It's good to see all these names up here. There's a lot of names, more than we've had in a long time. And I'm just looking and I'm going to read all of them individually because some of you I know some of you I don't because it's just the first name, but some of you I know very specifically and I've met many times. I'm trying not to touch my face. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight. Somebody says, that's exactly how I am feeling. A new kind of alone. My spirit is definitely not myself. Someone else says, good to see you too. Stay healthy. It's good to see you too, Brad. Thank you for offering this to us all. You know, we're not alone. We're separated, but we're not alone. We're all going through this together. It's a It's a powerful thing to think that the whole world is sharing this right now. It's a powerful thing to realize that there's nothing that we can do about a lot of this except for what all of us are doing, which is staying home. So I hope you all can stay healthy too. Someone says, same here. Alone, my children live. I live alone and my children are away from me. Yeah. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks for being here. And if you want to join us over the next few days, I'll get to see you then too. I'm open to anything, by the way, any ideas, even opening up some Zoom conference chats. Some of you have attended intensives or you know each other. If we want to set up some online support groups to get together, maybe we have a New York group, an LA group, maybe we set up some city groups. I'm open to any suggestion. I would like to help where I can. It helps me to help. So if there's anything that we can do, that I can do here, please don't hesitate to reach out and give suggestions or ask for things. You can email me, any of you, at brad@evoketherapy.com. Someone says, I love you. Someone says, I'd love to have a SoCal group using Zoom. Someone says it helps me too. Well, I think that's all I have for this evening. So sorry for the technical difficulties. Hopefully this will be set up. And maybe I'll see some of you over the next few days. And if not, take care. If there's anything you want or need that you think we can do, please email us and we'll do our best to help. Someone says it was better without slides. I'll keep that in mind. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad. Bless you in the work that you do. Someone said LOL. First time attendee. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad. Someone said, so great to see you in action. It's great to be seen in action. Take care, folks. Have a great evening. Hope this is helpful. See you the rest of the week if you want to join us. Love you all. Stay safe. Bye-bye.